Hey guys, welcome back. So we're jumping back into the Venom series with a bit of a continuation on the Origin of Flexo. Cause for this one, not only do we get his return, but we also discovered that he's met a couple people in his time. And now, it's time for him to meet Dylan. But before we jump in, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping back in, we pick up with what's pretty much a continuation from the flashback that we were given that revealed to us the origin of Flexo. And I got a link down in the description for anyone who needs to go back and get the breakdown on Flexo's new origin, because from here we go on to build on top of that, with us still staying in the 1940s, after the Williams brothers agreed to lending Flexo to the military, after they'd seen how capable Flexo was with it saving their lives. But even with Joel being more skeptical than his brother Josh about the two of them being able to control Flexo, furthermore they had their doubts about Flexo cooperating with the military at full capacity. And we discovered that in 1942, after Flexo had been out in the field, there was a moment when Flexo had pretty much went out and did his own thing. So as a result, the army ordered the Williams brothers to get rid of Flexo. Because after the brothers were shown the photographs and the battlefield reports where Flexo went above and beyond with killing Nazis after breaking out of containment and taking the fight 100 miles beyond his target, which on one hand, you can look at it like, well, he was doing what he was sent out there to do. But the military didn't see it that way, because the Williams brothers provided them with a gun, and a gun that goes off when it wants to isn't a good gun. And as we're told, Flexo destroyed an occupied village, and it's only through luck no civilians were killed. But had Flexo obeyed his orders and went after his target, he could have single-handedly ended the war. Because had Flexo proven to be a useful weapon in or around 1940, this would have changed the course of history, with quote-unquote live rubber, aka the Flexo Symbiote, being spliced and reproduced, as opposed to Project Rebirth and the plan of creating multiple super soldiers beginning with Steve Rogers in 1941. Which, spoiler alert, the super soldier program is the one that continued. But as we're told, with Flexo disobeying his direct order and just going after all Nazis, at some point between 1941 and 1942, Flexo had been put back in his containment and shipped back to the Williams brothers, alongside a ton of battlefield reports and photos, giving the Williams brothers the order to get rid of him. But between the brothers, after going back and forth for some amount of time, of which we're not told exactly how long, but at this point in 1942, they came to the solution of just putting him on ice, with the possibility of using the original Flexo as a supply to sample from and grow additional attempts. But when Flexo got put on ice, months, years, decades passed, until the recent battle between Dylan and the Gold Goblin broke Flexo's containment device and he was able to get free. But continuing in the modern day, it's here where we go back to Dylan, where he's having a bit of back and forth with the Venom Symbiote, who's really just trying to get Dylan to admit that it's not Osborn that he wants to go after, but instead it's truly his dad. And I gotta say, I'm glad that Ewing is addressing this here, because back in issue 19, it really didn't make much sense on how Dylan was going from 0 to 100 with his hatred for Norman Osborn. Because at the time I was thinking like, man, Dylan really hasn't been around or even alive long enough to really hate or even know Norman Osborn like that. But then again, you really don't have to know Norman that well to hate him. But like I was saying, I appreciate Al Ewing clearing this up really quickly and letting us know that this is more so Dylan having misdirected frustrations and anger amongst many other emotions that he's shown to have towards his father, Eddie Brock, throughout the entirety of this series. So it's good to see the character development sync back up from where Dylan was to where Dylan is at this point when we see him again. But during this conversation, which Dylan would call more of an intervention or therapy session, the Venom symbiote's trying to figure out if killing Eddie Brock is the whole purpose of his symbiote hit squad. But before the Venom symbiote gets that answer, they hear a group of people nearby screaming about a monster. So they head over to check it out, and it's Flexo. But as it stands, Dylan, he doesn't know Flexo from a can of paint, but the Venom symbiote can immediately tell that Flexo is Clintar. But as Dylan is going down the list of possibilities in his mind, he's thinking that this is a possible symbiote that he could recruit for a symbiote army like we'd seen in Dark Web. He's thinking that there's a possibility that this could be Eddie, like we were shown with Bedlam. in Dark Web. But before Dylan does anything, he first needs to get closer, so he tells the Venom symbiote to just read his mind and go with it. So Dylan jumps down and he makes them look like they're Iron Man with just a new suit of armor. So he tells the police, don't worry, Iron Man's here. And this here suit is just some future stuff, you know, just some organic metal, because it's the future and I'm a futurist. Tony Stark, yeah, that's me. And the police absolutely buy it. But as he then goes to approach Flexo in his Venom Buster Iron Man suit, Flexo looks at him and he says, metal face. And looking at Dylan here just reminds him of World War II, in the wake of his destruction, when someone with the metal face told him, let Brock handle his future. Let him beat his own destiny into submission. Let him even think he has won. He will learn that destiny does not battle me. Instead, it bows before me, like the slave it is. It humbles itself before the master. Time and destiny do my will, as will you, Flexo, as will you. And with remembering this, Flexo winds up for a punch, but Dylan quickly blocks it with his symbiote shield as he explains to the people that this is Tony Stark technical stuff that he's doing with his nanoplastic shield and his liquid repulsors. Cause again, he's trying to hold up the whole Iron Man facade. But the Venom symbiote lets Dylan know that that punch hurt, and even though they don't know who Flexo is, what they do know is that he's strong. But with Dylan hitting Flexo with the quote-unquote liquid repulsors, which is really nothing but symbiote waste, just like the webs that the symbiote would shoot with Dylan before, or Eddie, or Peter, or Flash, or anyone else. And when you think about it, that's symbiote poop, just hanging around the city whenever Venom gets to swinging around. But the symbiote brings this up to Dylan to let him know that he can't push all this out without putting anything back, so he's either going to need some brains or a lot of chocolate. But also in this moment, as Dylan approaches Flexo, Flexo begins to realize that this isn't the metal-faced man that he believed it was, and Dylan even takes it a step further to show his Venom face, which from here then triggers another flashback for Flexo, with him remembering the metal-faced man, asking him, whose power forced you here? Who broke your destiny? What's his name? And for a moment, as Flexo goes through these flashbacks, he's told by a four-arm Eddie, you're a symbiote, so you work for me. You know who I am. And just from the appearance of this, it lines up with the human symbiote Eddie just after he merged with the Bedlam symbiote and mentioned that they need to go find a time machine. But as it stands, we don't know much about that Eddie or what he was up to, or if anything changed after he bonded with Bedlam. And with the way that this is done, you can tell that Ewing is saving that story for another time, because there's a lot that we still don't know about what happened with Flexo back in World War II, because it's hinted that there's more to that story that we just haven't got yet. But for Flexo, with him having these flashbacks that come to him in a very interesting order, this causes him to remember Eddie Brock and believe that Dylan is Eddie, which right there just gets the fight popping off again. But as they go back at it, the Venom symbiote lets Dylan know that they got bigger problems heading their way, because even though the cops aren't coming in, they're calling for backup, which could mean the Thunderbolts and or Iron Man. So for that reason, they gotta wrap this up quick. But before Dylan can think of what he's going to do, Flexo's hand changes into a minigun, which in his case, it's one of the perks of being part machine. But with seeing this, Dylan's like, okay, he's about to shoot some web bullets, but how bad could it hurt? How hard could symbiote waste possibly be? Well, come to find out, it's really hard. But this gives Dylan the idea to do something that he's a little upset he didn't think of earlier. Because right here, he uses the Necro Sword to impale Flexo, separating him from the hive and severing the influence that Eddie Brock had on him, which is one of those things like, yeah, we knew Dylan could do this, but on top of that, we also know that the Necro Sword is something that he can't wield for too long, so he's got to be clever about when he decides to use it. But after freeing Flexo, before Dylan puts away the Necro Sword, he uses it to drill a hole in the ground so that the two of them can sneak away, because otherwise, when the backup showed up, it's likely that Flexo was just gonna get taken to Alchemax, which never really pans out good for anybody, unless you're Flash Thompson or Andy Benton. But as Dylan and Flexo make their escape through the sewers, Flexo goes into one more flashback of the metal-faced man, which picks right up after the last one, with the metal-faced man going on to say, do not resist, simply think and remember, who forced you here? Who broke your destiny? What is his name? Eddie Brock, the so-called King in Black. When the time is right, you will be the hand of my vengeance against him, and his own son will be your weapon. As Flexo looks up, and we see that the metal-faced man is none other than Dr. Doom, the busiest villain in Marvel Comics publication history. Like, this man don't take a day off. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.